Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Relatable Radio Hour with me, Dr. Green. Thank you so very much for joining. I'm really excited, one, because of the topic, but two, also because I am reconnecting with somebody I have known since the second grade. So we're talking like a very, very long time. And we're going to be able to reconnect. And he just has an amazing journey, an amazing story. I'm really excited for him to share it with us and share it with me too, because there are a lot of things that I don't know. So I'm really excited about those two things. So tonight we're going to talk about, whenever, we're in life, we can play it safe a lot of times, but then there are some times when we really have to take those leaps. And those leaps require a lot of stuff, in order to do that. And we're fortunate tonight to have somebody who has been just pushing his boundaries and reaching different heights in his purpose. And I'm just really excited about, sharing his journey on this platform, and just so very humbled and gracious to even know him as a person. So I want to welcome to everybody a good friend of mine, Shakiri Murrain. How are you doing, Mr. Murrain?
Outstanding, Sherman. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I mean, it's just a great thing to see. I remember, us being just little kids, little boys, just kind of going through the ranks of, elementary, middle school, high school, and college, and then just seeing us just kind of go off in different tangents in life, and just always have been, kind of watching you from afar and what you've been doing. So I'm just really happy and proud to have you here to share your story with us. If you
I
would, please just
appreciate
kind of
you.
share with the audience, a little bit about yourself and what's gotten you here today.
Yeah, Sherman, and I'll try to do this quickly and maybe like a
No,
brief
no, take your
overview
time.
so that, okay,
Take
cool. So that we
take your
can
time.
dive deeper if you need to. I am originally born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi, right there, and started a lot of my life there, school, my family's all there. And I think that Jackson gave me the foundation for everything else that I've done in life. And that's an interesting thing because as I come to Jackson and people look at Mississippi just in general, they don't always connect me to Mississippi. Or when they say, like, you're from Mississippi, but you don't sound like it. And I'm like, well, how many people do you know from Mississippi? Like, do you really know the state, or are you just kind of going off of stereotypes? But I will tell you that I think we have some intrinsic values within that state that make us very valuable when we go other places, and also there in the state as well. But definitely, I've seen it as I have expanded. And I moved to Atlanta in 10th grade. So I graduated high school here in DeKalb County. And for my first year of college, I went to Georgia Southern University because here in the state of Georgia, if you graduate pretty much with a B average, you can get what's called the Hope Scholarship. And so that sends you to any in-state school pretty much tuition free, especially the public ones. So I went to Georgia Southern for that first year on the Hope Scholarship. It was good. It taught me a lot. It is a school that's very close to the southern border of Georgia, the border with Florida. And what I saw in that school was a strong alumni. I saw a strong technical program, but I was kind of in the middle of nowhere, city called Statesboro, and about 45 minutes from Savannah, if you will. And so as I matriculated through that first year, I was still trying to find myself and find where I was going to go, what I was going to major in, who I was going to be as a person. And I know I didn't want to stay in Georgia Southern forever. So I was looking at transferring, and I looked at either Howard University in DC or the University of Georgia. And you know how life is. I had a girlfriend at the time. She was at UGA. My brother was in DC working on Capitol Hill. So I wanted to go to UGA. I wanted to be with my girlfriend, be close, all those things. And life just didn't see it that way. Life had it that I went to Howard, and the moment I stepped on that campus, I knew what it was all about. Like, I saw Black people from Africa, from the Caribbean, from Mississippi, Atlanta, DC. I mean, it blew my mind that there could be a campus full of people just like me. And so for the next 4 years, especially on campus, I didn't face any discrimination. Like, there is a real safe place. And I look at Howard as the Mecca, and it really gave me fertile ground to grow because everybody there is the same. You can eliminate that variable. Now, there's still challenges when you have all of any kind of people, but to not be discriminated against for any reason for those 4 years, it took away all those things like, well, I can't do it because that person's better than me, or I can't do it because they have X, or they didn't want me to be in the club. It's up to you, because all clubs are available for everyone there. So I got deep into study abroad. I studied abroad first in Spain, in Salamanca, Spain. Then I went to Cuba. Then I went to Brazil. And those 3 trips changed my life again. And it made me deeply involved in studying and traveling and learning languages. And my father is Panamanian. So I grew up with a little bit of Spanish, but my mom's from Chicago. So not that much. But
Hmm.
when I went to Spain, I knew enough of the foundation to kind of build on it. And I started in the very beginner level courses. We had classes every day and we had to test into a level. So I basically tested into the beginner level and I studied hard. I studied really hard because there were 65 students in my study abroad group, but we all came from different universities. So now I'm in a situation where I am from an HBCU, but I'm one of the only 3 Black people in that study abroad group. So we had to prove ourselves, we had to show what we could learn. And it was incredibly difficult. It was a foreign language, and we signed a letter with our host families that we would not speak in English. So we would be in school all day studying Spanish, and then we would come home and we would have to speak Spanish. And I mean, if you wanted to get some food or go use the telephone, because in these days, this was before Skype. So I was literally going downstairs to a payphone to call my family, but I had to explain to people what I wanted. And that was incredibly difficult in the beginning, but it made me learn more and it made me get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So long story short, continue studied abroad. I graduated from Howard and immediately I came back to Atlanta and I became a financial advisor. But I pretty much knew that at age 24, like I understood the theory around being a financial advisor, like stocks and bonds, retirement plans, those kinds of things. But I had no clue for myself. Like I was 24 years old. I had never had a retirement account. I'd never sent a kid to college. So I decided after 1 year as a financial advisor that I wanted to move to China. And a few years after graduation at Howard, they will send you job postings from the Career Center still. And so
Hmm.
one of the job postings was for a Spanish import-export company that was based in Nanjing, China. And so this is 2006. I I took the interview. Now we did have Skype. Took the interview on Skype, got the job as an account manager at Asia International. And within 4 months, I sold my house, I sold my car, and I moved to China. I didn't know anybody. I mean, zero. I had to learn everything from scratch, man. That first year was, it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. Like, just getting your teeth kicked in from another culture. And then you're so far away that you can't really go home when you feel bad. And I remember because I moved to China in November of 2006. And then the next year in China, they have Chinese New Year. So for like 4 weeks, the whole country shuts down in February. Everybody goes home, they spend the time with their family. But if you're a foreigner, you got no family, that's a really lonely time to be in China. And so I read a lot of books. I traveled around my city. I got to know it better. Things like getting a haircut. I had to learn how to do that because I went into a barbershop during that time and a bunch of Chinese guys just congregated around me and they're like touching my head and they're like, scissors? Like, how do we cut this? And I'm like, no, bro.
Wow.
So I walked out. I went to Walmart. I got my own clippers and I've
Yeah.
been cutting my hair ever since. So I went to university over there. I studied Mandarin. Also extremely difficult, but once I had Spanish, the people in China said, Shakira, you really need to learn Mandarin if you want to stay here. So I learned it, did that whole thing, and came back home after 5 years in China. And we can delve deeper into that experience because a lot happened there, but came back and started my own company. So in 2012, I moved back home to Atlanta and started Jade Trading Company. I knew it was time for me to come back home because I was seeing babies born, I was seeing older people passing, and I just wasn't there. And I tell you,
Hmm.
Sherman, man, that was really hard because you know how it is. We grew up in Mississippi, we're
Hmm.
close. We
Hmm.
will go and just sit at somebody's house for 3 hours and just
Hmm.
talk. And so
Hmm.
when they pass away or their family members, and you're not there to go to the funeral, or you're not seeing these babies and they're growing 3, 4 years old, it was a lot. And so I wanted to come home. In addition to starting the company, I wanted to be closer. And so I came home, started the company, and for the first year, again, very difficult experience. Like many people were misusing my service. They were used to me just being a China guy and going to a factory. And that's cool if you're making 10,000 bottles. But at the moment you want to create a new custom bottle, now you have to do that locally. And I didn't know that. I was going to Chinese factories to make prototypes. And that's just not what they're used for. They're like a sledgehammer. They're good for making 10,000 pieces. They are not great at making one. So after a year of really challenging business, I decided to build out a product development team here in the United States. And that was a game changer because after building out that team, I went to a conference for Damon John, the Shark Tank guy. And I'm in this conference and they're talking about like helping people scale their companies. And after the conference, I go up to them and I'm like, I lived in China for 5 years. I have a business that does this. And they're like, what? Wait, you're a black guy, you live in China, you speak Mandarin. Why don't you join our team? So Damon John's team, now this is separate from Shark Tank. He
Right.
had a academy that helped entrepreneurs level up. So over the next 6 years, he sent us over 130 projects from all over the place, Sherman. I mean, Canada, Mexico, all over the States, toys, tools, clothing, promotional items. We made some of everything except for chemicals or food. And we would help them to get like better packaging so they could stack it on the shelf in Walmart. We would start from the very basic design and build out 3D printed prototypes and electronic components. So if it's a smart device or anything like that, we could do that as well. And our team got very efficient. Like over those 6 years, we grew every single year by at least 50%. And then 2018 came and the trade war with China. It is like nothing I've ever seen before because 2016, when President Trump was elected, he was talking about a trade war. And there were a few tranches. Like one of them was on general goods, didn't really hit us. And I'm sorry, the first one was on raw materials, like industrial goods, like metals and steel. That didn't really hit us. The next one was on very specific goods, like luxury goods, cars, things like that. It didn't really impact us either. But the third tranche was on general goods, and that hit us right in the face. So overnight, my prices increased 300%. So I was importing goods. So let's say, for example, I'm importing this bottle of water,
Hmm.
and my import tax is 6%. So that means, for every 100 I buy, I got to pay $6. After the import tax was put in, now on top of that 6%, I still have to pay the tariffs. That could be anywhere from 100 to 300%. And so now my businesses were small companies and I couldn't pass on all of it. I couldn't absorb all of it. So I did the hardest thing I've ever done, which is close that company. And still to this day, that is very painful, but it made me pivot again. And I got an MBA in supply chain management. I wrote a book. And so now I'm the director of innovation at a space called the Russell Innovation Center for Entrepreneurs. And I help Black-owned companies to scale. Basically, when they have physical products, we support 500 companies and about 40% of them have physical products. So that's my responsibility.
Wow. Wow. I mean, even as you kind of speak that, like when you just said all of that, I mean, how does it feel to know that you've experienced all of that and this is where you are now? Like how does that even feel just to reverberate that?
It feels good, Sherman, because I talk to, kids in my church, kids in my community about study abroad. And I think because I'm relatable, like I've done it, I am the same as them. It's like, okay, I can do this because I've seen this guy do it. But I got to be honest with you, inside of me, because of kind of the standard that I've set, I feel like I'm not there yet, not even
Oh, wow.
close. Like I have so much further to go, so much impact to make in this life that it makes me antsy to know that I'm 42, I'll be 43 next year, and I just feel like I have so much more to do. So yeah, it's game time.
Well, I mean, we are our harshest critic. I mean, we are pretty hard on ourselves, and I'm just gonna pivot and just say, hey, you're doing some great stuff, so don't beat yourself too much on that. I mean, you're doing some amazing things. I mean, you've from what you just shared with us, I mean, you've done more than people will probably ever do in a lifetime.
Wow. Wow.
I mean,
Mm,
the typical
mm,
person would never, probably not even experience 1% of what you just said. So
wow.
I know that
Amazing.
whoever is listening right now is just like amazed, just like I was just in hearing it. But I know that within ourselves, we always want to do more. We always want to push ourselves to do more. And of course, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that you just mentioned. I think one of the recurring theme I heard and what you shared with us is that, and you said it, um, you made yourself uncomfortable,
Mm,
but when you do that, you're growing. And so I want to go back to, kind of in that college phase that you spoke to, because you mentioned how you had gotten the scholarship to go to any place you wanted to go. You chose Howard. It was like a surreal moment. And I think this is kind of where it really all began for you.
mm,
Just being in that atmosphere, seeing the different cultures, being around the different people, of course, the education that you received. But when you were tasked to, travel abroad, like, what was it about that particular opportunity that you felt like you had to take?
mm. Sherman, I would say first, I appreciate you saying that because we are our harshest critics. And outside of this, I've talked to you as like a personal coach, like a life coach. And I appreciate that thought because I do think it's like they talk about mental health. And the only way to get better or to solve a mental health issue is to talk to another human. Because when we get in those silos, we start thinking
Yeah.
about everything through these blinders. And, sometimes we need each
Oh,
other.
yeah.
So I'm thankful for that.
No
But
problem.
at Howard, what I thought was unique about the experience was it basically showed me that if you wanted to do it, it was possible. And so my philosophy coming out of Howard became, if fear is the only reason I have not to do this, I'm about to do it. Because we can't be scared to the point where we just are paralyzed. And I call it analysis paralysis, where you get to the point where you're thinking and you're thinking and you're thinking, and you've now thought yourself out of the thing. But if you just start small, the hardest part for me was just getting on the plane to go to China. And then
Yeah.
as I talked to other entrepreneurs or other people who wanted to go, man, I was there for 5 years and three people came over to visit me. My mom, my dad, and my current wife. That's it. Probably 50 or 60 said they were coming, they couldn't wait to get there, but they would just never get on the flight. And I'm telling you, the flight cost the same amount that you spent on eating out this month. So if you decided to sacrifice and move to China, the people who moved over there, 50% of them stayed. But when you stay, Sherman, like number one, there's a lot of similarities between Chinese people and Black people. So they were looking at us like, wow, you can come over, you can be part of our culture. And it was like, yeah. And I think that originated for me in college when I was doing the study abroad programs. But a lot of Spain or Italy are very similar to the United States. But when I went to China, that was a time where it was completely different. So you had to rest on your laurels or your foundation. And the foundation for me was learning that uncomfortable experience could lead you to changing the world. In the very beginning, it seems super hard, like getting in hot water, but over time you get used to that water and it's not as hot anymore.
Hmm. Well, that fear can cripple a lot of people. And it
Mhm.
sounds like that fear for you only like urged you to go towards it more, which I think is a great philosophy because I mean you're essentially saying if something scares you, then you need to go towards it. And that's again how you grow into it.
Yeah.
Um,
Sherman, if
so
I could, one thought there, if I could, because I think that's true, but I would also say that that's like Shakiri at age 27. That's me
okay.
like just going.
Yeah.
And now I'm 42. I have two kids. I have a wife. And so what I've learned now is, yeah, the creativity is important. And if I had to speak to my core skill set, I would say I'm a super creative. but that can also be a challenge. So what I've
Ah,
learned to do is to protect myself by putting experts around me so that I can't be accessed so easily. And
that's
that
true.
that has been a learning that I've had to measure.
Well, talk to us a little bit about that because that is a great that's a great afterthought to kind of bring into the conversation. Like how has that been so important for you?
hmm I think especially in business, it is entrepreneurship is a tricky thing because people come into it and they think immediately you're super successful, you got this S on your chest, and now you're supposed to save the community. But the truth is, most businesses fail within the first 2 years. And then even if they don't fail, it's not like you're a millionaire. You are having a lifestyle business. And so as I got into that, I expected either to not get enough clients and fail or to get a lot of clients and be successful. What I never anticipated was getting a lot of clients and still having stages of success and having to grow through it, and then a trade war coming. And so when those sort of macroeconomic factors came, I felt like a sailboat in the Pacific Ocean.
Mhm.
I had no control and I couldn't do anything. And so those challenges made me want to look inside and see what I could change for myself. But to be honest with you, it wasn't a whole lot. So what I started to do was to build systems and build processes around myself that would protect me. And I think as entrepreneurs, we think it's our personality that's going to carry us, but it's really not. Because when you deal with Costco or Sam's Club, just know that everything you touch, everything you look at is a process, and someone has set that up. So you don't even know who the CEO is. You don't even know, you have no access to that person, but
Yeah.
there's a process in place that they put for you. So you come through and you understand what you're supposed to understand. And you also don't see a lot of things that are on the back end. So I have learned to build systems like that. So now I feel very comfortable in a team of 40 people where I can build systems and just know that I can work through those systems as opposed to it being all about my personality.
Yeah. I think the personality side of it carries over to people who really don't see the whole big picture.
Mhm.
I feel like
Mhm.
for you, and I'm just kind of speaking on what you kind of shared, for you, you figured out a lot of things very quickly that were not really related to your personality. You had to really learn and absorb a lot of experience to be where you are, and you would have had to, and you wouldn't be in this position if you didn't do that. What did you observe and absorb in the spaces that you've been in with the business and the experience that you've had that has really benefited you to be able to share good knowledge and good information to other people?
Mm. Wow, that's a good one. For that, I would point away from business and point more to like culture.
Okay,
Like travel in China. Sherman, I saw a lot of China. I didn't do a lot of like luxury travel, but I did a lot of factory travel. I did a lot of seeing different cultures. We look at China from here as if it's just one big place.
we
But
do.
and even when we eat Chinese food, we expect for it, you go into a Chinese restaurant, you're gonna get these things.
Right.
But the truth is so different. Like there are 56 ethnicities in China, and all of them have different cultures, different languages, different foods. They're in different regions. So some are based on seafood, some are really hot and spicy. And a group of my buddies and I, we were all in similar industries, and we saw it was tough to do business. So we started to do a dinner every Sunday where we would get together and drink what they call baijiu, and that's like a Chinese white wine. But man, it is very strong, and you need to understand it to be able to live there and connect with the people. But through doing that, we went to a different type of restaurant and we were learning different things about China. And each one of those experiences, which taught us about ourselves and what we could bring to the table. So I felt like when I was in China, it was that same kind of uncomfortable, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I never felt at risk for my physical person, like that someone was going to attack me, but I definitely felt like I don't know how to get food right now, or I don't know how to communicate with this person. But again, just trying, going out there and giving that person the benefit of the doubt that even if they were touching my skin and they'd never seen Black people before, that they were doing it out of a place of love. And there's
Hmm.
also a word in Chinese that is nigga, nigga. And I'll tell you a quick story. I was on the elevator from my office, and it was maybe like my second week in China. And it's late night, maybe like 8, 9 o'clock at night. And I was working on like the 19th floor. So we're coming down the elevator, and I'm on with like four Chinese people. And at this moment, I know no Chinese. I know nothing about really the country in general. And Sherman, they all get on the elevator and they're all going, nigga, 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 nigga. And man, I'm like, what is going on? I just got on this elevator. I'm being nice. I took a shower last night. Like, why are they calling me a nigga? That is so offensive. I'm about to take all of them right now. And so I didn't fight anybody. I went home, came in the next day. I'm talking to my coworkers, my Chinese coworkers. And I'm like, why would they say that? Why would they we weren't even in conversation. Why would they say something like that to me that's so offensive? And they were like, what did they say? And I was like, nigga, nigga. And they were like, oh, Shakiri, like in Chinese, nigga just means like I'm trying to think of the words. It's like nigga, nigga, or it means like that thing,
Oh.
nigga, nigga thing. It's not, it has nothing to do with the context that we're thinking. So I think a lot of me also had to grow beyond my upbringing because as
Mm-hmm.
soon as I heard that word, I attached it to everything I knew, but they had no context for it. So I think some of that over time, Sherman, has helped me grow, helped me see other cultures, helped me embrace other cultures. Things that are different now aren't necessarily bad because also in China, they are not a Christian society. Now, that doesn't mean that they're atheists. It just means that they're not Christian. And so they have things called Chengyu, which is like if three friends are together, one should be the teacher. So we have the Ten Commandments, they have Chengyu. It may not be Christian, but there are a lot of things that have overlap. So like treating your family right, being at the right place at the right time, caring for your community. And I think when you find the commonalities in another culture, it can be embraced and it can also be multiplied because then you bring it back. And I will tell you that when I learned more about the culture and I got into a business interaction that was going wrong, it gave me a lot of context. I was like, oh, your mom is sick right now. And in your culture, that means everything needs to shut down. Or your wife is out at a meeting after 6 o'clock, and that is super disrespectful. So now I understand why you're angry at me. Those kinds of things I just wouldn't have gotten. So you miss it. And a lot of times as Americans, we seem insensitive, but I think it's paying attention to other cultures. That's the main point that I learned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got to be a shell-shocked experience to be immersed in a culture like that when so many things that are important to one culture may not be important to us at all. Um, but I mean, when you mentioned the word, the N word that you mentioned, uh, that would be very just traumatic, I think, from anybody, a black person coming from the South and then going someplace else and then hearing that. But yeah, so many things to be learned culturally in that same regard. Is that also how you were immersed in learning the different languages? Because I would imagine that's tough. I mean, if you have to learn it
Mhm.
for survival skills, I mean, you said you had to like use it to eat and to communicate with people. I mean, that's tough to have to learn it and grasp it. But was it easier to learn since you were immersed in the culture?
Yeah. No, it wasn't. So I'll be honest with you, Sherman. Like if we go to France or, even Brazil, the Romance languages, you know enough English to basically understand what they're saying. Maybe like 30% of it. You might not know if they're talking about tomorrow or yesterday, but you know they're talking about going to the store. So so you can get a good amount of Romance languages, but Chinese doesn't work like that at all. It's all characters and the syntax is different. So you don't say things in the same order that you do here. You can't just translate a lot of things because China has some things that we don't have and vice versa. So in the beginning of it, my first Chinese teacher sat down with me and Sherman, I mean, for months, bro, she had a recorder to my mouth and she would just make me go through the tones. So there are four tones. Every word has four ways of saying it. Like ma, could be ma. Each one of those has a completely different meaning. One of them can mean a horse, one of them can mean your mother, and one of them can mean to get punished. So depending on how you say that tone, you just told that person either I want to say hi to your mother or I want to punish you, like those kinds of contexts. So had to learn that. And because it wasn't intuitive, I enrolled in university. And I'll tell you, one of the best things I fell into was a group of expats. We were from everywhere. A number of them were Jewish. Some were from Spain, some from South America. And these are the group that I was going to those Baijiu dinners with. And they basically told me, Shakiri, if you want to stay here, you have to enroll in university. So I enrolled in university full time after my second year, and I studied Mandarin full time. And that was really, really beneficial because a lot of their culture is inside of the character system. And when I was full time studying the characters, I was like, oh, that's why you think like that. Because,
Hmm.
for example, there's a character called An, and it means safety. But truly, it's a house with a woman inside. So now, just like I told you, if that woman, if your wife is out at a business meeting with me at 6 o'clock, that's really disrespectful because that means your house is not safe, right? Because the way you look at safety is a house with a woman in it, and that is family for them. So having business meetings after hours with married people is just, it can be seen as disrespectful unless you know them. And so those kind of things from the characters and studying every single day taught me a lot. I was studying Mandarin in the morning and I was teaching English in the evenings. And that was basically life. And I think that overall experience made me learn 30 characters a day, and you needed about 3,000 characters to read a newspaper. So that's where I am now.
Wow, that's crazy. That is just unbelievable. The differences in that alone. But I'm also just kind of thinking like your situation, like there had to be a certain amount of stress too with this because you were in a different location altogether. You're away from home, millions of miles away from home, away from family, away from a culture that you were used to. You were learning, you were trying to, accomplish certain things. That in itself has its own stress. And then the communication barriers, all these different other barriers. Talk to us a little bit about how you managed to handle that when, you had so much to do and so much to accomplish, but you had a certain level that you had to kind of maintain in order to absorb it and also to be able to learn and grow.
But see, Sherman, this is where, and I'm glad you asked that question because this is where Mississippi comes full circle. Because I think after my 5 years in China, and now I've been connected for 15 some odd years to China, um, I think that Mississippians have a lot more in common with China than we know. And the reason I say that is, bro, a lot of the things are the same. Like if you walk into my house in Jackson, Mississippi, you better take your shoes off and you better say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, to my mom. And if she gives you a plate of food, you better eat all of it. And that's
Mhm.
just how we do. China's the exact same way. There are levels. Now, the things you do to show that respect are different, but that same respect is needed so that now, Sherman, you could come over and introduce yourself or talk to my mom, and she would know you because she's already seen you and she knows that connected to me, there's just a certain level of respect that you have for her. And it's the same. And I feel like if you don't take the time to learn those things, it's a lot harder. But when we come over, China's also a very agrarian society. So they do agriculture, they do farming, they do fixing things. There's literally a word that is, it reminds me of Mississippi a lot because in Chinese it says ma shang, well, ma shang daola, which means I'm on the way or I'm finna come. It could be 15 minutes, it could be 2 hours.
Right.
It doesn't
Yeah.
give you any exact amount of time, but just like in Mississippi, I'm like, man, I'm
Hmm.
finna come through. And that could
Hmm.
be like, whenever I get there. And
Hmm.
that kind of like not being exact about things, it comes from the country because a plant's going to grow, but it's not like hourly I can look at it. I'm just going to look at it. And over time, when it's grown, I'm going to tell you it's ready. So those kinds of things, I think the nuances, they actually help me a lot. And lastly, I would say that China and Africa have a very long relationship. Americans and Westerners came over and created the opiate wars. And so they basically took a lot from China. And in general, Chinese people think when foreigners come, they're trying to just extract resources and not give anything. But there's a long relationship between Africa and China. So they look at Black people like we really do have a long relationship if you extend that respect. And so, man, I really say for Black people, for people who are minority or may not be like at the top of the social chart in their country, check out China because you'd be very interested. Now, the government is a different thing, but you'd be very interested in how the people see you. It's awesome. I had a great time.
Wow. So it doesn't really sound like it was a whole lot of stress once you kind of learned and kind of absorbed how people kind of operate in in that area.
Sherman, being honest with you, man. So I lived in 3 years in Nanjing, that first city, and then I moved back to the States because of that. I was like, I don't want any more stress, I want to move back. But the States was even more stressful. I couldn't take it here. Everybody was talking about their iPhones not being fast enough and their houses not being big enough. So I moved back to China for a second stint. So that was the full 5 years. And I would say that like that stress to me became less in China than it was in the States. Now, over time, I wanted to see my family more than I could alleviate the stress. So I had to deal with it. But I mean, just being honest with you, I could still move back to China and I would be connected to China for the rest of my life, but I could still move back there and be relatively stress-free.
Mm. Well, I mean, you were able to just really connect and you grasped it, you know. Uh, is it possible for people to, from your experience, is it possible that people could get there and not have the same type of experience that you did have?
Woo, man, so many. And that's why I say 50% of people punch out immediately.
Mm.
It is different. They eat different things. Like I've seen chicken feet, or well, you was chicken feet, but I've seen brains, I've seen dog, I've seen all kinds of things that we wouldn't eat. And it may make you uncomfortable, but I still think that like when you look long term, when you look at everything, it's not that many things that make you uncomfortable. And then once you start learning the language and traveling for yourself and you can do it yourself, that makes you a lot more independent. But I
Hmm.
will say that I've had cousins that have gone over, friends that have gone over, and they got sick or, people weren't being nice to them. And I can try to translate for them, but if you don't have the fortitude to just stay, you're not going to stay, and I'm not going to force you to. I would rather you go somewhere like Italy or Canada where you feel more comfortable because China is truly like going to a different planet. It's a cool
Hmm.
planet, but it is a different planet. So I think you got to be ready for that. And everybody's not going to make it, but that's okay. That's totally fine.
Hmm. So, I just I'm getting so much of a adaptability from you.
Mhm.
You just being able to adapt and being able to just learn, grow, observe, and then kind of move those pieces to help you kind of get to the next point in life. And you did a lot of interchangeable moves and, traveled quite a lot. I want to also talk to you about some of the amazing accomplishments, right, that you
Mhm.
have acquired in your time. You mentioned the Shark Tank, Damon
Mhm.
John.
Yeah.
Is that his name, Damon John?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, Talk to us a little bit about, being in those types of spaces and those types of, opportunities and how they've really helped you kind of get to where you are as well.
Sherman, it all started from promotional products, man. I started cutting my teeth on import and export from promotional products. So while I was in China, distributors for like Disney movies, Sherlock Holmes, Despicable Me, all those
Mhm.
things, we were making promotional items. So before the movie would come out, we were making all of the tchotchkes, the t-shirts, the stress balls, the pins, whatever the thing was, we were making all kinds of stuff. And from that, it taught me how to make products of all kinds and also going to a factory and seeing everything from Neiman Marcus to the dollar store, all on the same production line. So when I started working for Damon, I already had a very wide view of product development. And he was looking for someone who could walk into a situation and consult and listen well enough to figure out how to optimize their supply chain. Because every time you're doing something different, so my skill set is not an engineer and I'm not like I'm also not a designer, but I think the unique skill set that I've developed over time is how to look at an idea or raw materials and figure out the process to get it all the way through manufacturing. And I mean for all kinds of stuff, Sherman. So when I learned that, I think that Damon and I, because a lot of people came and went in that academy, but the thing I think made us stick was we could serve a broad amount of the community from the products that we knew how to develop. Now, I'll be honest with you, I've been close to a few people like Damon, like those large celebrities, and it's just not what you see on TV. You know, like he's a cool guy. He's very nice. He's very personable, all that stuff. But it's not like a personal interaction. You know, I'm like a person who works in this large, massive organization. He comes through, he does his speech on stage. People take a picture with him and he's gone. You know, he's off to wherever he's going next. And so I don't think it was like a tutelage kind of thing. And then when the academy shut down, I have not been in contact with him after, but I learned so much from those 6 years. I mean, I basically learned that you don't need to search for a bunch of customers when you can find one client. Because when I found Damon John's Academy, he just kept sending us business to the point where it was a blessing, but we never had to look for another client. And I think that I have continued to do that in every business I started after. Because I don't know if you remember, but during the pandemic, I started a PPE company called Mississippi Cares.
Yeah.
And so I was in Atlanta and we had a group in Mississippi and we did the same thing. We found what I call an anchor client. And we had one anchor client with 34 clinics around Mississippi. And we set up a warehouse with all of our PPE supplies right there in Flowood. And we would be on a delivery schedule every 30 days. So what we did is order extra supplies. And then we started making those PPE kits that you saw, like for Kroger and Mike Espy's campaign and the like. And the company did extremely well. And then we closed it down in 2 years and everybody got paid out and we all went on to do other things. So I think number one, I learned that connecting to one client is important. And I also learned that every business is not going to live forever. It may have a really important purpose, and then after that, you just dissolve it.
I'm glad you brought the business up that you did over the pandemic because that's just the quintessential way to pivot, you know,
Mhm.
um, in the awareness that, you know, there's something that's severe going on worldwide and you have to be able to make that next move, still keep the business coming, but make a pivot so that you can still find that one client, like you just said, and still be able to usher in that business that you need. Um, just very grounded in your business skills. I know that a lot of people who are listening are just very just enthralled in, you know, your tenacity and your ability to just be able to make these great decisions. Um, every business person, like you said, has challenges. You know, you said that the average business lasts for about what, 2 years or so.
Yeah.
Um, talk to us a little bit about, you know, the challenges, not necessarily the specifics, but some of the things that you learned from the challenges that you faced, you know, going in this trajectory.
Sure. Sherman, and I'm appreciative because I would say that I also learned the value of friendship. Like when I was in Atlanta selling PPE in Mississippi, the real reason was because I kept seeing not enough supplies and we're at the bottom of the list and we can't get this, we can't get that. And I'm like, man, I can get on the phone right now and order some PPE supplies and have them in Mississippi. Why can't everyone else? And so we just did it, you know, me, Larry McGowan, Elliot Flags, my brother Jelani, Cord Campbell. We got together like 6 or 7 Mississippi people and we just did it and we just took care of it and we donated 5% of our inventory. And I think that it was one of those things that brings you to that self-realization that sometimes you can make an impact. Like you can really change the way that things are going. And I think as Black people especially, we look at our idiosyncrasies. We look at those things that we're insecure about and we say, oh man, I can't start that business. I could never do that, right?
Mhm.
But I would point to this gentleman. So I work right now in a center called the Herman J. Russell Center for Entrepreneurship. It's called the Russell Innovation Center. And we serve 500 Black entrepreneurs. But Herman Russell's philosophy is something that I think answers your question because This black man in the 1950s built a construction business that today is the #1 black-owned company in the state of Georgia, as far as revenue is concerned, the number 25 nationally. I mean, this guy built some 70% of the Atlanta skyline his company had something to do with. Um, but Mr. Russell, and when I say those things, you immediately think like Barack Obama, like Oprah Winfrey, just amazing. But man, Mr. Russell stood 5'6". He had a deep speech impediment, and many times he had to have a spokesperson speak on his behalf. And this man was making hundreds of millions of dollars and still had those things about himself that he was insecure with. So I think that ability to be insecure, to have challenges, to not be perfect, not have it all together, but still try and get started and just take your shot. I still have friends who've been talking about starting a business for 15 years and never even taken their shot. And I'm like, at some point, you're gonna have to just try something that you don't know how it's gonna end up. And that to me, because when I look at Mr. Russell now, he's passed away and passed his business down to his kids. And now they're using his legacy to build things like the Atlanta Falcons Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That sits adjacent to his property, that $3 billion stadium.
Wow.
So it ends up being like, man, I can't promise that it'll end up like Mr. Russell or even like myself, but I'm just saying, take your shot. Everybody has a unique talent.
Well, yeah, that fear of failure can just hold you back. That
Mhm.
fear of just not being able to be what you think that you can be can cripple people a lot of times. So that person
Mhm.
that said they're going to start a business years ago and still in the same place, they've been victimized by their own fear, and that's very common. And I'm so glad that you shared that perspective of friendship and wanting to getting something done and something that you learned in those challenges. Um, you talked about your current position. What is it about this position that really excites you? Because I can imagine from all of your experiences and everything that you've been able to accomplish at this point, you have, a huge array of expertise in business, and you're working with individuals who are kind of in that beginner space. So, what do you like about the role that you're in?
Yeah, Sherman, I love it, man. And I would imagine it very similar to where you are now. Like you've worked yourself up to getting your doctorate and you meet with all kinds of people. I've seen your podcast and just the way that you light up when you learn something new, like that
Yeah.
same thing. And I see it now because now when I come into this position, I've seen so many companies, I've seen so many different business deals that now this is crazy to say, but I'm like the old head. These companies now are looking at me as like a strategic advisor and
Yeah.
as director of innovation. So we support 500 Black-owned companies today, and about 40% of them are product-based. So they're in the warehouse with me. I help them with 3D printing. I help them with building prototypes. I'm about to start a program in January where we're going to pick 15 companies and take them all the way through the prototype development process, but also teach them how to raise capital and how to do marketing roadmaps. Because if you just build their prototype and you don't have a marketing plan, or you can't raise at a minimum $2 million over time, you're not even close to being in the game. And so when you see products on Walmart shelves or doing well in Amazon, just know they didn't just build a product, they built the whole company. And so that's what I've learned. And I see this as like fertile ground for me because previously it was really challenging, Sherman, because like I said, we developed a lot of products, but less than 5% of them got to market sustainably. And the reason for that is that in addition to just developing a prototype, there's so many other moving parts. But when I was doing this as my business, let's say, for example, you came to me, you said, Shakiri, I want to develop this cell phone case. Well, I'm going to help you develop the cell phone case. And I'm going to charge you somewhere between $10,000 and $50,000 to develop the case, the packaging, everything you need, the inner labels, all that. But now it's on you to go and find a market to sell it to. And that was the big challenge. And so now what we've learned is you got to build that into the product development.
Yeah.
As you're developing the product, you got to come up with the marketing plan. You got to be thinking about how you're going to raise capital. You got to know who your target market is. All those things are critical. So I'm in a space now where I can objectively look at their project and tell them from my own experience of what it feels like to lose $100,000 of your own money, that this is not a good idea. And I was talking to a guy last night about this, and it was like, we feel like it's a win if you come to me to develop your product and we look at it objectively and we look at all the data and we tell you that this baby is not breathing. And because of that, you go and get a job and you don't exhaust your 401k and you don't mortgage your house, because I've seen that too many times and then the business doesn't work out. So if I can slow you down enough to make you really think through product development, I would say, Sherman, probably 20% of people are really going to get to market. So I got to get that 80% and make them really understand how they need to change it or how they need to end it. And I think those were hard conversations earlier in my career. But man, now that I've experienced a lot of the pain myself, I look forward to those conversations because I wish somebody had told me. I really
Mm-hmm.
do.
You're helping someone that needs to hear it, not
Yeah, man.
necessarily make the same mistakes that you would have made or that you had made in the
Mhm.
past. So that's very gratifying. You're teaching. You're kind of like a professor. Teaching people the accurate ways to do something so that they don't make the mistakes. Not saying that they won't make them. Everybody makes them, but you try to prevent them as much as possible from not falling into those pitfalls.
100%, Sherman. And it goes back to those processes and
Hmm.
systems. You end up learning how not to, make a social media post every month, but to set up a whole schedule for 30 days. So all these posts are just going out automatic. And then with things like artificial intelligence,
Mm.
I've been delving deep into it, Sherman. I really have, man. I've taken a Microsoft class and gotten a couple of certifications. And, I'm not a coder. Like I can't code software, but artificial intelligence has given me additional capabilities. Like I can make images, I can summarize documents, I can draft emails, I can write content where before I had to hire somebody to do those things. So I just feel like in today's world, if we're willing to learn and adapt, there's a lot that we can take from our prior experience and implement it now. And the students who are coming through, man, they need that because if we're talking to them about 15 years ago, it's going to be a huge disconnect. But when I start talking to you about building your product out of AI and using the chatbot to communicate with your customers, now it becomes real. It's something that you're excited about.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think you said something that really stuck out to me. Learning and adapting, that's been your
Mhm.
bread and butter. And so
Mm.
you gravitate to anything that's going to have you do those two things, learn and adapt. That's the theme. That's it. That is what I am getting the most from you. Um, and something that you didn't say, but you implied it in a lot of the situations that we just talked about. You set goals for yourself. You take the time
Mhm.
to think about things
Mhm.
that you want to accomplish. What is your recipe for accomplishing goals?
Man, Sherman, I feel like you like took back the covers and you just everything, because everything you just said was 100% accurate. So for me, setting goals is critical because I am a huge list maker. Every day, I got a list, I got a to-do list, I have a short-term, medium-term, long-term. And I think the understanding of entrepreneurship is that you're always moving fast. But if you're always moving fast on everything, you're not doing a good job on it. And so what I've also learned how to do is long-term planning. Like, yeah, I'm working on these things hard every day, but I'm also doing some small planning for something I'm trying to do next year. And I'm trying to see how much progress I'm making towards that thing. Um, you would hate going shopping with me, bro. Like, I literally look at every tag, I look at I want to see the material components on the label. I want to see what country it's from. I want to compare prices. I have the worst case of buyer's remorse ever. So for me, I really want to get into something that doesn't give me that kind of remorse. So I have to plan. So I plan in advance. I mean, Sherman, like to buy the cell phone case, it took me like maybe 5 or 6 weeks. I probably reviewed 120 products on Amazon before I found the exact one I wanted. But it's all about that goal. Like I knew what I was looking for. I knew all the things of it. And so when I went out there, I couldn't find it. Like 99%, just that ain't it. So
Yeah.
it's a personality trait, but I also have to your point earlier, I have to realize not to be so hard on myself. Like it ain't got to be perfect. We can,
Mhm.
many times you can adjust to what the situation is, but I want to do a lot, man. Like I think God put us here to be great. You know, He put us here to achieve and to do it with His glory in mind. So it's not about Shakiri, but if I pass away and all the impact is allowing 100 other people to do 100 other things that they wouldn't have done beforehand, and I had just one part of the impetus for them to do that, Sherman, I'll be super happy.
Hmm. Hmm. But also remember that you are accomplishing what God put you on here to do. So everything
Mm.
that you've done, He put you on earth to do it. So always remember that. I mean, He wants us to be as much like Him as possible, but still, what you've done, He wanted you to do it. So don't lose sight of that. Always remember that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I know for a fact, with the experiences that you've had, what you're doing right now, it's definitely your destiny to be doing this.
Wow,
So
man, that's a beautiful thought.
I just wanted to share that just in case you hadn't thought
Mhm.
of it.
Mhm.
Someone's listening right now who is captivated by fear.
Mhm.
They are living in their limitations. They have thoughts, they have ideas, they have plans, they have lists, but they haven't done anything. That
Mhm.
hasn't been your story. But what would you tell that person that's listening that is living that way right now?
There's never going to be an easier time. You
Mm,
know, like I remember, and again, I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were like, man, my kids are young now. I should have gone and done this thing before. And I have young kids now. You know, I have a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And when they were born is when my company was closing, and I had to pivot and figure out all these things. And I think, that's a part of it, man. It is supposed to be hard, and life is never going to slow down while you're going after your ambition. So you just got to get started. Like you actually have to almost how like the seas were parted and there was a time of calm and all those things crazy were going on both sides, you could walk through the middle, but you have to part that. And I think if you get started, the seas will part. Like things will start happening when you create the momentum that you never envisioned. Like there's no way I could have ever envisioned meeting Damon John and him being like, come into my academy. Because that was like 2 years after I started the company. But bro,
mhm,
just taking those steps, man. Because the other thing is nobody has the formula. You know, nobody knows. Nobody is like, and I think I learned that during the pandemic. I felt like there was some world order, and when things went wrong, someone was going to come in and fix it all. And it just wasn't. Like, it was literally us, bro. Like, it was us. And I feel like we are all we have. So we got to take those steps. And I think as I see my kids getting older, we talk to them about it too. I'm like, man, jump off that swing or, try to talk to that person. And if they don't see us doing it, the words mean absolutely nothing. So it becomes even more real to me as I raise my children, Noah and Naomi, because I want them to go after it and I want them um, to reach their full potential, whatever that may be. And I think the only way for me to truly get that point across is for me to have taken my shot, win, lose, or draw, but to have taken my shot
mhm.
at life.
Beautiful. I think everybody can take some stuff from that. Even the ones that
Mhm.
are kind of living outside the limitations, they're breaking it, just like you are. Um, what is one word that affirms who you are?
Adaptable, adaptable. I'm a chameleon.
Mm-hmm.
I am, man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You
And
are
it's
the
interesting. 'Cause
yeah. Go
Mm.
ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, well, I just think that people put us in boxes. They see us and like, oh, you're a black guy from Mississippi. You
Yeah.
should probably rap or play basketball. And I'm like, yeah, I do import export. And they're like, I tell you, when I tell people I'm an import export, the first thing is, are you a drug dealer? Like, what are you
Mm-hmm.
importing and exporting? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like,
Mm-hmm.
nah. But I will also say in those rooms, I'm usually the only black guy. I'm usually the only
Wow.
black guy. That's
Wow.
fine.
Yeah. Breaking those stereotypes and again,
Mhm.
just breaking the barriers, breaking the limitations. Adaptability. If you had said anything else, I would have had to bring you back to that word. So I'm glad you said it.
Thank you, Sherman.
Shakiri Murrain, thank you so very much for joining us tonight, man. It's just been a pleasure to hear your story. I know that other people have enjoyed it as well and have been taking just copious notes just on how you've moved and how you've pivoted and how you've broken those barriers and limitations upon yourself and just been able to adapt and been able to grow in the process. If individuals wanted to follow you or connect with you, how can people do so?
Yeah, well, fortunately, I'm the only Shakiri Murrain on the planet. So if you just get my name right, you got me on all social media, Facebook,
Wow.
LinkedIn, Shakiri. Last name is M as in man, Urrain as in Nancy. And, please stay connected to me because I love this. I love these conversations. I love all things Mississippi. I mean, Sherman, it just shows me how far we've come that we went to second grade together, and now we're looking some 35 years later talking about our lives, and we just never could have envisioned it, man. So I look forward to continuing to have these conversations with you for 35 more years. Continued success in your podcast and in life, man. I am so amazingly proud of you, bro. Anything I can do to ever help, you say the word.
I sincerely appreciate that. I was gonna give you your flowers as well, man. Just doing amazing things, and like I said, I followed you for quite some time. It was good running into you physically a few weeks ago because I couldn't even remember the last time that I had seen you. But again, just have been following you and just seeing the amazing things you've been doing. And so I couldn't be more proud of you, man. I really, really could not at all. So thankful again that you were on tonight. What's something that you're grateful for?
My kids, man. Sherman, I was just home and I didn't tell you this at the time, but I was home for a funeral. We
Mhm.
lost a close family member. And, it's just that age of life where I'm 42 and I see my parents getting older. I see my kids getting older. And like, I see people passing away. And like these days, man, reading books to my kids in the evening, seeing them wake up in the morning, seeing my daughter begin to read. My son is autistic, so seeing him beginning to like get the help he needs and develop and get over these challenges that he has. It's everything, man. I mean, being successful in business, all those things, yeah, I want to accomplish that. But I tell you, there's a huge part of me now that's going to be home every night to make sure my kids
Mhm.
are okay. Because it's like that long-term perspective. Like at 27, I was just trying to make money. But now it's like I want to open opportunities for my
Right,
kids.
right.
Yeah.
So much more purposed.
Oh man, I can't wait to, nepotism is that's what I'm here for. Shoot, I think LeBron is a winner. Shoot, I'm trying my best to make sure my kids, because
Why
my
not?
ceiling should be
You
their
know,
floor. Like this is
yeah,
where you're gonna start.
that's right. I know that they're going to move very far, very fast, as you as
Mm.
their father. So I already know that's definitely gonna take place. I would just say I'm grateful uh, to see us being in this space as adults, because I never thought of it in that capacity, but I mean that's quite amazing that we've been able to just live life and to have things go so well for us in life. I mean we all have challenges, of course, but it's just really good to see us in this element. So I'm very grateful about that. So
Mhm.
thank you yet again for joining tonight, Shakiri. I really appreciate it, man. For everybody that's watching, make sure that you follow me on all social media outlets. Go to my webpage. Go to YouTube, subscribe to my page. You can watch this episode and other episodes as well of this show. But please do that. And please come back again next week. We're going to have another amazing guest and another amazing topic. I hope you all have a great weekend. Have a great evening.